quick introduction. I got this little tweet. You probably know what that is now because of the guy down south, but and the tweet was publicizing my talk, and I replied to it and said, you know, I'm so happy that it came from this hospital because from day one I was really welcome with open arms at St. Joe's, and so I couldn't pick a better place to work, and I really appreciate all the support that they've given me through the years. Y'all ready for this? Y'all ready for this? Okay, there you go. So I complained already because the lights don't dim, right? So I didn't really want you to see me, but the guy at the back's got a camera, so that's why the lights are on. So anyway, a student pinned this to my door for some reason. He said, the most interesting scientist in the world, I don't always wear a lab coat, but when I do, I make sure someone takes a picture. So I'm taking my lab coat off. All the pictures are done. And it was Bill who works in the hospital, and he says it's such a laugh when you see all these, it just looks like models. You know, they're wearing the lab coat, and if the people in the lab knew that, then they would realize that they deserve all the praise. Can you hear me at the back okay if I, yeah, good. So they deserve the praise for the work that's done, and therefore I really don't deserve to wear a lab coat. What am I going to talk to you about? We split in 4 sections. Some motivation. Why do we do this research? What are probiotics in fermented food? And one of the guests asked if there would be any sort of questions and things. You don't get out of here unless you write down the definition of probiotics correctly. And that may be harder than you think, because I had 55 dental students. I told them 3 times it would be in the exam. 8 got it right. It's the easiest program to get into at Western because they're all dumb anyway. I have a dental friend up there, Bob Lale, and it's his birthday today. So let's say happy birthday to Bobby. Hey, Bobby. All right, who needs them the most and my hope list. So I want to tell you a bit about me. What if people, what if you believe in what people tell you? So when I was in primary school, I was told I'd never get any O levels, so they sent me to a school with gangs. I was bullied by some of the worst people you've ever seen in your life. One of them gets sent to prison because he put a hatchet to this guy's head. So we're talking serious gangs. Anyway, I got 7 O levels. I was told in my first secondary school with the gangs that I wouldn't get to Paisley Grammar High School and I wouldn't get any A levels. I got 5 A levels. Went to Glasgow University, I studied science. I was told I'd not get an honours degree or go and do a PhD. I did both. Arrived in Toronto via Calgary. I was told I was nuts working with surgeons. I'd just be their lab slave. I published over 300 papers with surgeons. I don't believe in slavery. I was told by a Medical Research Council panel my work on probiotics was a waste of time. Why was I doing it when we had antibiotics? Some of the people who rejected my many grants since 1987 are now working on probiotics. So I don't like being told what to do or what I can't do. Motivation will always beat mere talent. Always, not always, not, you know, almost always. So Ronaldo is really good at soccer. And as much as I could try, I'm not going to be as good as Ronaldo, right? So, but it's really important. And Nelson Mandela said, the greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. And Desmond Tutu said, it's by standing up for the rights of girls and women that we truly measure up as men. And that's pretty much what I've dedicated my research on. And of course, this great man was here because of Michelle Campbell and because of the foundation, and it was a very inspiring visit, and it's the most amazing person I've ever met. So the definition of probiotics is what you have to remember. Live microorganisms. There's no such thing as a dead probiotic. which when administered, not consumed, because you can administer them, could be to other parts of the body, in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit on the host. Great. What's the rationale? Pretty simple. You're replenishing organisms that are naturally in a given niche as a means to counter something that's wrong, or you're administering organisms whose activity restores homeostasis, balance. Okay? So that's the rationale. What are probiotics not? They're not in you unless you've taken them. And I've told people this maybe 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. They say, oh no, we've lots of probiotics in them. No, you don't. You only have them in you if you took them. It's not sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is a fermented food. Okay, it's not a probiotic. Technicality. It's not fecal transplant, which I'm not going to talk about in this. You'll be glad to hear. The FDA wanted to own fecal transplant because they wanted to make it a drug. So I basically told people, if they want your stool, just put it in the mail. You know? It's not multiple strains, never tested on humans. So, you know, you see, go on the website, look up probiotics, and you get these experts. You need billions, billions and billions, and 50 strains. No, not necessarily. Are you American or what? Everything doesn't have to be bigger. It's not animal studies unless the probiotic is for animals. So people will do on animal studies. They'll say, you buy my probiotic, look at all the data we've got on it. Mice data. No, no, no. You give a probiotic to a mouse, you're trying to help the mouse. And that's good if you like mice or rabbits or horses. So what's fermented foods? Well, here's some examples. Yogurt, cheese, sausage. Didn't know that, did you? Bread, sourdough bread, sauerkraut or kimchi, olives, soy sauce, tempeh. And what's behind this? What are the 2 things that are behind that I've hidden? Any thoughts? What do you feel like after hearing me talk? Yeah, but what do you, sorry? Alcohol, yes. Beer and wine. Isn't that good to know? In London, we've started off this little craze. We've now got these awesome little companies starting up. You may have heard of them. This is fermented green tea that tastes awesome. So these companies are starting up, and it's a good thing. Guess what? The Guardian, which I'm sure all of you read every day. You do, good for you. This is yesterday's Guardian in England. Magical microbes, how to feed your gut. Sourdough bread has yeast and lactobacilli, but they all perish in the oven. So you'd say, well, why buy probiotic bread if you're going to kill the bacteria in the oven? So what they said is the main health benefits come from microbes having chomped away on lots of fiber, breaking down the gluten proteins, releasing tasty, mold-deterring acids, rendering the nutrients more digestible, and lowering the glucose spike after consumption. So that's not a probiotic. It's a fermented food. The organisms are dead, but because it was fermented, you get a benefit. If you compare grape juice and wine and gin, gin's effect on the microbiome, says this guy Spector, gin isn't very good. So I know John White's up here somewhere. He loves gin. So gin isn't very good. You got the message, okay? Gin isn't very good, but red wine is better because of polyphenols than grape juice. So alcohol plus fruit is good for you. You're starting to like this, eh? They went on to something else, and this is his huge message. He's studied something like 4,000 twins in Britain. He's a really super guy, this Spector. He said, if you were to view that your microbiome as a garden, fiber would be your fertilizer. Fiber. Right. What is fiber? Artichokes, Jerusalem artichokes, leeks, celery, chicory, onions, and garlic. The first couple I'm not so keen on. The rest I'm pretty happy with. Eat lots of them. It's not necessarily someone who calls themselves vegetarian who has the most healthy gut. It's the person who eats more diversity of plants in a week. Having the same salad every day isn't going to be as healthy as eating a rich diversity of food with occasional meat. Interesting, eh? Lots of fiber, lots of variety. So what are you? What are humans? 3 things. Skeleton, tissue, and what's the last one? Microbes. And that last piece has changed and will change medicine, because we never ever took it into account except when we were trying to kill them. So that's the 3 things. And you have them everywhere. You know you've got them in the mouth, the skin, breast milk, alimentary tract, urogenital tract. What you maybe didn't know is they're also in the fetus, the placenta, breast tissue, and even in the brain. And the last one, we're still trying to figure out what they could be doing in the brain. So, how did bacteria become part of us? If we're basically microbes living in a microbial world, how did we get them? Well, first is by birth, vaginal birth. The second is by holding, kissing, touching the baby, letting the baby go around the carpet. Now, I was in the States one day and there was a TV news article on. This woman was freaking out. She says, "Oh my God, my baby is on the carpet. Think of all the germs she's getting." It's like, hello, that's a good thing. And then with pets. I had twins. One of them's, oh, they're both in the audience. So that's what they looked really cute. But if you live in a house with at least 2 animals, 2 dogs, you have less risk of allergies. All right, what if they're born by cesarean and you're not breastfed? Where do the babies get their microbes? This is a map of the world, and this is C-section rates. Now, the purple, the dark color, is excessive. So in Brazil, about 80% of babies are born by C-section. Can you imagine? Now, when we had our twins, we were in ICU at St. Joe's, and a woman purposely had a C-section because she wanted to be the first baby so that she could get a picture on the London Free Press. Can you imagine? In January 1st. True story. So there's other countries that have almost no C-sections, and unfortunately that's a bad thing because sometimes you need to have a C-section, right? But you shouldn't have it excessively. So if people have C-section, how are you getting the mum's bacteria to the baby? And this is an ICU. You look at this. Look at it as a box. What microbes are in this box? What microbes came in that door? I'll tell you what, none, except on the people and the equipment, and they're all giving antibiotics. So there's multi-drug resistant bacteria in that place. The nurses have it. It's not their fault. They're in that environment. So how do you introduce beneficial microbes into this environment? And should you? I would argue you should, and I'll give you examples. Unfortunately, babies can get diseases called necrotizing enterocolitis if they're preterm, low birth weight. And again, unfortunately, in the 5 weeks that we spent at St. Joe's, a baby got neck. And it's tragic. They basically put the curtains around the baby died, and you see the effects of it. It's the commonest GI emergency of unknown cause. The incidence is about 6% in under 32 weeks. In London, it was around about 3%. Mortality is high, especially in smaller babies. Morbidity, cerebral palsy is an example, and it's expensive, 100 to 250,000. So the baby has to have surgery. Sometimes the bowel is removed. It's not a pleasant thing. So we had a great debate. Myself and Dr. Victor Hahn, probiotics should be prescribed to all premature infants. It's been watched by 397 people. It's huge. Puts Justin Bieber to shame. Who do you think won the debate? Yes, of course I won the debate. Why did I win the debate? This is a study of these are all studies done on giving premature, low birth weight babies probiotics. And things that go on the left-hand side of this line means that it worked, and this is the total here. Favors probiotics, favors control. So I said, there are so many studies now saying that we should have probiotics for low birth weight babies. Why is this not in London? That was the debate, and I fought for it. Guess what? Since the introduction of London Health Sciences 3 years ago, the rate of NEC has gone down to almost undetectable levels, saving the lives of babies using probiotics. Isn't that cool? All right, this one's for some of you that babysit. Hands up who babysits. So here's the scenario. You're babysitting, young couple, babies get colic. You've gone to their house. They're this close to divorce. They go out, crying baby. They come back, baby's quiet. They walk in and go, holy jeez, what did you do? I gave him some bacteria. 911, hello? Well, guess what? It works. So babies who received Lactobacillus reuteri probiotic drops went from crying from 197 minutes to 51 minutes. That's the difference between divorce and no divorce. I told a physician once, he said, if you wait 3 months, it cures itself. Oh yes, you're going to have a crying baby for 3 months. If you use the drug of choice basically does nothing. Amazing, eh? And they did a study of looking at all of it, and they said if you breastfeed and give this probiotic drops, you will significantly reduce colic. All right. And the thing about this is you can't just look at disease in one little spot. And Jillian knows this because she's in a hospital where she's dealing with all these different diseases, conditions, and poverty, malnutrition, inequality, contaminated water. This is more so in Africa, poor education. So it's not just about one thing. And an example of this is IBD. Now, IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, the rates have been increasing in kids. So when they looked at IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, they said, no, it's a mode of birth. Imagine, even although the inflammation doesn't happen until later on, it's the diet, it's breastfeeding or not breastfeeding, it's where you live, it's exercise, modern lifestyle, socioeconomic factors, psychological state, educational levels, the microbes, infections, smoking, pollution. It's pretty hard then if you're a physician to try and work all that out, and that's why the future of medicine isn't going to be one doc knows it all. It's going to be one doc says, okay, here's my piece, another doc says, here's my piece, someone else, and some of it will be up to you, and some of it, it's too late. Hello, Mom. Okay. I'm going to complicate this a bit more because this is toxins. Our air, water, and food is contaminated. This is a Scientific American article. An increasing number of clinicians and scientists are becoming convinced this chemical exposure contributes to obesity, endometriosis, diabetes, autism, allergy, cancer, and other diseases, and the fetuses are particularly vulnerable. So if you're pregnant, does anyone test what chemicals you've been exposed to? No, not unless you see a naturopath, they might. In Britain, I remember about 20 years ago, they found 50 chemicals, cleaning chemicals, inside the blood of some pregnant woman. Anyway, our food and water is contaminated, you don't believe me, so developing countries, 70% industrial waste is dumped untreated into water, polluting the usable water supply. Drinking water for 40 million Americans contains antibiotics, anticonvulsants, mood stabilizers, that's antidepressants, and sex hormones. Now you're starting to see why they voted for Trump. 40% of the world's rivers are too contaminated to drink or wash in. An average 99 million pounds of fertilizer and chemicals are used each year. That's a lot of stuff. This is a map of pharmaceuticals in the environment. So this is global occurrences and perspectives. So again, the higher, darker color, North America, this is between 101 and 200 pharmaceutical agents detected in surface water, groundwater, tap, and drinking water. Can you believe it? Unbelievable. So, I asked the question. You can't make these drugs, so if I was to come along and say, I'm going to make this drug, the company will say, no, we're going to sue you. This is our drug, we own it. At what point do they not own it anymore? Shouldn't we say to them, you're responsible for these drugs right until they're degraded? If they're in our water supply, degrade them. go to the sewage plant, degrade your antibiotics or your drugs so it doesn't get recycled. Because we don't know what they're doing to us. Of course, I didn't get very far with our argument, but anyway. Here's another thing, pesticides. We have a student, Brendan, and others working on this. He gave me this. I love this analogy. Hold on a minute. This guy is wearing all this gear to spray the pesticides. This baby's not wearing any gear. So next time you eat some tomatoes, make sure you get the gear on, eh? So it's not surprising it's linked to diseases. And here's just a few examples. Alzheimer's disease, colorectal cancer, Parkinson's, and chronic diseases. We love to use chemicals. We're a chemical society in a microbial planet. Now, I'm not saying farmers shouldn't use it because they have a problem. They're trying to produce food for what will soon be 9 billion people. So we have to find ways to help them. And I would suggest the future will be using microbes in fields instead of chemicals. Research in our lab shows that we might help bees. And you may have heard the bees have been dying off, and pesticides are one reason. And neonicotinoids, anyway, you know what they're called. The pesticides, they've been banned in Ontario. Actually, it's a voluntary ban. And they're not the only cause of the decline of bees. But we've been doing some experiments. We found that a probiotic strain reduces the effect of toxic pesticide and improves survival. So the pesticide is not killing the bee, they're wrecking their immune system. So if you use a probiotic to improve the immune system, the bee is better able to fight off disease and therefore it lives longer. And we're going to do a study in real bees. This is done in flies, because flies is a model for bees. We're going to do a real study in bees to see if we can come up with a way to supplement bee hives and help them live longer. Here's another example of what we're exposed to. This is hair mercury levels on women of reproductive age in Ontario. So they measured mercury. And they found nearly 2/3 of the 22 mother risk callers, all 23 of Japanese women residing in Toronto, and 15% of Canadian women of reproductive age had mercury at a level that caused neurological damage to the fetus. 15%. What do we do about that? Nothing. Nothing. What should we do about it? I don't know. You tell me. So we went to Africa. We did this study. I'll talk about Africa later on. And we used a probiotic yogurt, which again I'll talk about later on. And we went to this little school, and here's Jordan, our student. And we asked a simple question. If you give probiotic yogurt to kids and to pregnant women, do you reduce the amount of mercury that is taken into their body? So how is mercury taken in? Lake Victoria, a lot of people pan for gold, and they use mercury to pan for gold. So the gold goes in. You can imagine it's around the shallower waters, and it's a small fish that live there. And everyone says, you know, you don't eat the big fish like tuna. That's true, but in Lake Victoria, the small fish are caked in mercury. So it turned out these kids, without knowing it, and the pregnant women were all too high in mercury. Daily intake of this yogurt reduced in pregnant women 36% mercury uptake and 75% arsenic uptake. Because they took the yogurt, and you'll say, how does that work? Well, what happens is the lactobacilli bind to the mercury. This is mercury here. Right? Here's lead. So when the mercury is in the stomach, the lactobacilli bind to the mercury and you poop it out so it doesn't get absorbed. And we're going to hopefully do study in Windsor to look at the same type of problem. We have lots of gas in the bowel. Some of you may know that. Because bacteria grow there, they don't like air.
Tell me how I'm supposed to breathe with no air.
No air. So, see this guy here? He's a probiotic. This guy's not a probiotic, but he looks like him. Right? So he looked like him, but he wasn't a probiotic. So these bacteria are going into a system, and really they're passing through. They're not staying in your intestine. They're passing through and they're seeing other organisms just like them. But as they're passing through, they're doing things. They're metabolizing things and they're producing compounds that help your health. So the one on the left looked just like a probiotic. Remember I said probiotics are not in you unless you've taken them. So there's high quality evidence. I'm just going to summarize examples of probiotics against acute infectious diarrhea, antibiotic associated diarrhea. If you take antibiotics, take probiotics for a month. Clostridium difficile associated diarrhea, hepatic encephalopathy, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, functional gastrointestinal disorders, and necrotizing enterocolitis. And this isn't me. This is the Journal of American Family Physician, 2017. So experts have looked at the data and said, you know what? This ain't snake oil, baby. So the million-dollar question is, and I know you'll ask it, which probiotic should I take? So for 20 bucks after the... this is all you need to do. Go to this, probioticchart.ca. The neat thing about this, so this woman, Dragana, from McMaster University, I told her a number of years ago, I said, we need to have a list of probiotics that are only studied in humans, because by definition, you should not call a product probiotic unless it's been studied in humans. Unfortunately, lots of products in Canada ain't ever been studied. So you could go to a health food store and say, you got to use this one. It changed my life. No. To hell with your life. Show me the data on this, right? So what they did was they looked at only things that have been tested in humans. And it's got lots of tables, and you maybe can't see them up the back. So, for example, you have Crohn's disease. And you look down this list, and you go, well, there's really not much. Sorry, that's not Crohn's disease, but pretend it is. Here's ulcerative colitis. You look down the list, you see what's good for you. So this is a line by Procter & Gamble. It's a good probiotic. It's a good probiotic if you have IBS. It's not any good if you're someone else, right? So make sure you're trying to take the right one. And then if you're not convinced that this one study is good enough, then there are others under IBS. So here's another one here called Proxiflor and 2Zen. There's other options that might help you. So this is really cool. It's the first place people should go. There's now the equivalent in America. Who needs probiotics the most? So I'm going to tell you about Africa's first probiotic food, but first, an exciting moment. Jessica and Shannon, you are going to get a chance to taste the probiotic yogurt we make in Africa. So these young ladies have made this especially for you, little samples. And they're going to come round and give you some probiotics while I tell you about what we've done in Africa. Now, Jessica works at, she's a master's student at Brescia College. And she worked on one of the strains that we have, one of the bacteria. And not only did she find that you make great yogurt, she found that you can make great fermented orange juice, apple cider, and grape juice. Isn't that cool? And I bet you'd like to try that, but that's not on the menu tonight. So they're going to come around. You don't need to take it. Those that don't take it will not be allowed out. Actually, yeah, there's only about 130, so not everyone can take one. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about Africa and our project there while they come in. Jessica, go on this side, because they'll feel out of it. Yeah, sorry, you'll have to wait. Yeah. Yeah, it's dairy. Yeah. Okay. I like this. This came from my favorite rock band of the 80s. Any of you live in the 80s? Remember a band called New Order? Good band. Anyway, Bernie Summers wrote this, and I really, really like it. It's called The Power of Silence. Cruelty occurs when people lose touch with the real world. We experience the world through television and use drugs to enjoy social communication. We use machines instead of our bodies, and when our bodies fail, machines keep us alive. We do not feel compassion. Our neighbor is invisible. When he suffers, we turn the television off or simply register a blank. Existence is a bubble we feel will never burst. We've abandoned the world in favor of ourselves. Our education system is wrong. It takes no note of the subtleties of human nature. It places more importance on the memory of an individual than how memorable an individual is. The best are wasted. This is why society is disintegrating. Can't you see spelling doesn't matter? We're not saying anything anymore. It's called the power of silence. I think that's such a great quote. So my journey to Africa started a long time ago in South Africa and Kenya in 1982. And the lights are not the best here, but you have to see how good looking I was back then. See, contrary to public opinion, I did have hair. Anyway, I'm sitting in a place in South Africa, and that's my great uncle. My dad was born in Durban, and his great uncle was born before him and died one day old. And I was the first person to go back to find the grave in 1982. And these are my grandparents who had gone to South Africa to help with the railroad. So that's why my father was born there, and the story began there. And Africa's in our blood. So this is my daughter, Jennifer. This is her shirt. Isn't that cool? She's got Africa inside her. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, so Africa is part. How do you like the yogurt? Good. It's got salmonella in it. It's really nice. You'll feel the benefits tomorrow morning. All right. Remember I told you about Africa. So we could have done this study in the Great Lakes where 40 million people live. They drink water and eat fish. You know where the Great Lakes are. They say that Lake Erie is as polluted as Lake Victoria. But anyway, the Great Lakes are threatened. This is Lake Erie, new report. High levels of mercury and PCB pollution, invasive species. This is 2012. Not so long ago. Instead, we went here where there's 30 million people living in the lake. And scientists warn Lake Victoria is dying. November 2017. A lake that supports over 30 million people. They say it's dying. The number of undernourished people in the world, this is millions. Undernourished people. 200 million people in India. Now here's the countries, China's second, so way ahead. But here's the countries we're in, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. Lots of undernourished people. So Bob Goff is a guy at Western University and is a manager of housing. And he was inspired by Stephen Lewis, who said in 2002, we have to do something about the HIV/AIDS crisis in Africa. So I donated a probiotic strain that you're eating right now. And Shari Hekmat from Brescia made the new yogurt. We called it Fiti, which is Swahili for health or fitness. And we taught two kids, two Western students. We said, go over to Africa. We had contacts with a group of women, and you're going to teach them how to make probiotic yogurt. So they did. So we set up a community kitchen in Mwanza, Tanzania. Here's the mamas. This is the group of women who started it all off. Tukumwana is the name of the woman. This was the first building. So here we are. It's being constructed. They painted it. This is a pure water well, so they've clean water. This is their little kitchen. And then they started making probiotic yogurt. And the kids came, and of course, kids love food anyway, and kids love visitors, and so that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but the kids kept coming back, and the men came. That was really important. You have to have the men come, because they need to buy into it. And so I was fortunate to go, but the real heroes are the students, and there's 100 interns, and Shannon, who was partly delivering the yogurt, and who helped Jessica with this. Shannon also spent time in Tanzania working on projects. So here's some of the women that have done it. This is Megan Enos, and she went to Africa, and the Department of Microbiology said, no, 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 you need to come back. You're missing a course. I said, what course? Communications course. I said, she's friggin' speaking Swahili. What are you talking about? Anyway, we sort of get our priorities wrong a little bit. So she went and set up her own clinic and performed the trial, and I showed you the results earlier on Mercury. Anyway, the breakthrough came with these two Dutch guys. So they published this paper, Probiotics for Everybody, and then this thing here, and it was to do with this. So the problem we had in Africa was, how do you make this practical? So these Dutch guys said, we will put 2 strains in a sachet. This is a 1-gram sachet. We will have the directions on the back of how you make it, so anyone can make it. 50 cents US. It can make 100 liters of probiotic yogurt. Survives 2-year shelf life in Africa. So now we had the means. So then, this is dead simple. This is how you make it. It doesn't cost a lot to do it. IDRC in Canada gave us money to scale this up. So now we're in Uganda, where the Dutch guys were there in Uganda. Here's some of them making the yogurt. And they're really kind of neat. They start to market, so you can't really see it very well. But this is painted green on the main road to Kampala. So people can go by and say, oh, there's the green building. We're going to go in and buy the yogurt. And we've encouraged them to make it unique. So here's Rembogo, right? And here's Obukonje. So we said to them, have your own little marketing piece. So if people say, oh, I really like theirs, I'm going to get theirs. Now, it's not really a problem because the yogurt kitchens are quite far apart, but we wanted them to identify their own business. This is the number of kitchens now in Uganda. About 120. And you'll notice that there's 2 places in particular. Can you know what's up there? How's your geography? There's a million refugees up there. So one of our next things we're trying to do is get up there. Now, refugee camps don't tend to have sheep, but we can provide skim milk powder that you just add water. Now you have the milk. And then we could potentially set up little mini businesses in the refugee camp. And there is a refugee camp here that we're getting. And so here's a couple examples of one of the kitchens. We call them production units because they're not really kitchens. Now we're giving 250,000 people access to this in Africa. Started off with 2 students from Western. So you'll say, who's involved? This is an old slide from a few years ago, but it's an interesting slide. So this is kids and orphans, and you can see that some of the orphanages are getting this. These are regular consumers, and these are incidental consumers. Now that's a really good thing. It means people are coming back. We want them to come back. It means they like it, they buy into it. People train, males and females. There's actually slightly more women. There's about 1,300 women involved in owning the businesses, imagine. And then this is, if you make just 10 liters with this, you really don't make any profit, you just get your money back. If you make 100 liters, you get a good profit that you can then send your kids to private school and buy more cows, do other stuff. So that's what we're working on. And the neat thing is, it's 10 times the value creation of the bottom of the pyramid, 10 times the value creation. And there's probably not many businesses like this that cover the whole value chain. So here's the value chain, is the cows, the milk, the delivery of the milk, and this is, means that there's a guy in a motorbike, so you're now employing him. He takes the milk to somewhere else. You have the woman in the kitchen or the production units. You have someone who's involved in packaging. You have the people who provide the packaging. You have healthy products. You have distribution of them to different places. You have sales. This is it started off quite primitive, but now when you see these places, the refrigerators and it's actually pretty reasonable. You have happy consumers, and then you have scaling up. And this is this would make you think of a Canadian little mini factory. And we're planning an amazing woman called Maimuna Kanyamala is planning on creating one of these that will employ 400 people and make about 4,000 liters a day in Tanzania. So it's really kind of exciting. And of course, here's my mug. I got in the London Free Press, and I called for fermented food to be on the Canada Food Guide. So my point was, if you took out yogurt, kimchi, kefir, etc., and put it into a separate category, you would say to everyone should be taking some kind of fermented food every day. You choose which one you like. And that's what's cool about kombucha coming into London, the nuts and cheese, there's some kefirs, and maybe there'll be some beer as well that will come in. And now you'll have options. And we should be having that every day with the fiber that I told you about. And this isn't all BS. This is would be the first country in the world to do it, so Canada's not going to do it. We're going to try and make Kenya, Uganda, or Tanzania the first country in the world to do it. And there's many, many health benefits, so this is published with good scientific papers. Benefits of fermented milk. Okay, people say, probiotics, there's no studies done on them. All right, daily consumption, reduce the risk of onset of type 2 diabetes. This is a 20-year study of 194,000 subjects, a 4-year study of 3,500, and a study of 2,300, saying fermented foods are good for us. Longevity study, 10-year study of 4,500 subjects. You live longer. That'd be nice. 6-month consumption of kefir in 40 subjects increased bone density in osteoporosis patients. Pretty good. Improved central processing of emotion and sensation in the brain. This is just after 4 weeks of probiotic. And we're now getting, as I said to you, we're starting to find out what is the connection. And I'll show you a diagram in a minute of how that works. Reduced incidence of fever and diarrhea in 72 elderly patients taking probiotic drink for 6 months. We published a paper, actually, they're having a press release today or whatever. It's on Western's website, 27,000 likes. Pretty cool, eh? And it was a study we did showing that Canada could save up to $100 million if people took probiotics to prevent and treat common cold and flu, even if you had the flu shot. Pretty cool. And it's because it improves your immune response and helps fight off the virus. And even if you get better 1 day earlier, being sick for 4 days is better than being sick for 5 days. Lower risk of bladder cancer. Study of 120,000 subjects over 16 years, and at cardiovascular disease risk, lower with 26,000 for 12 years. So there's lots of data. You can't just believe hype. So where do we go from here? I had a lot of time to try and find, well, I took a lot of time to try and find the right sort of image, and I like this because it's a woman, and often it's women that give us hope in the first place. Guys are usually depressing and watching sports and stuff. I kind of like this because she's got her hands clasped together and it said hope. So what's my hope list? I think hope is in her hands to some extent. The program in Africa, I hope, goes global and reaches millions of people. I don't know why it can't be in Canada. We're looking to have one in London through youth unemployment. There's a place downtown London. There's lots of kids in Canada that are not eating the right food either. We bring nutrient-rich fermented food to the needy in Canada, and especially to children. More research is funding on ideas like this instead of mainstream. We use beneficial microbes to prevent and treat disease and let companies make claims without turning food into drugs. Why did I say that? So here's the deal. You want to test, in your research in the US, you want to test Activia to help treat cancer. Doesn't matter what the disease is. FDA says, nope, you have to register Activia as a drug. Why? Because now you're treating a disease, preventing a disease. So now, okay, supposing I register Activia as a drug, I do the study and it works, now I have to sell Activia as a drug. How ridiculous is that? Because you can't treat and prevent disease with food. And that's a regulatory system from 100 years ago. To treat and prevent incontinence, we're working on. Reduce uptake of environmental toxins by using microbes in soil, water purification, air filtration, waste disposal, fish farms. You're going to say that's all crap. No, no, no. Let me tell you about 2 things we're doing. So Greg Glure is this brilliant colleague of ours, and he's engaged in a study in Tanzania where the chemical plant says the last thing we want to happen is for this chemical to get in the St. Clair River. If it does, we are in deep you-know-what. How do they prevent it? With microbes. Microbes breaking it down, right? So it's happening right now. Fish. I went down to Windsor. This guy phoned me up, or he heard me speak at a conference, and he said, do you think probiotics could help fish? Sure, because, you know, probiotics can help everyone as far as I'm concerned. I said, sure, I'll come down to Windsor. So I went down to Windsor, and it was funny. There's this guy fishing. And I'm like, what? You don't eat the fish? Oh, yeah, I eat the fish. I'm like, this is one of the most polluted waterways on the planet. You're eating the fish. Anyway, next door to where he was fishing is a fish research plant. And the guy said, these salmon are getting infected by bacteria, and we have to give them antibiotics, etc. So I said, well, why don't you try probiotics? Okay, sure. So we do. Comes back to me a couple of months later. Holy crap, it worked. He says, they're bigger, they're fatter, they're healthy. What's going on? So now they're putting in a grant for it. So bottom line is, you've got to try stuff. Might sound crazy, but it can work. And saving the honeybee colonies, which I hope we can, and give us a range of healthy new foods to relieve pain and discomfort in urogenital infections. So that's all very well, but fermented food in life, why not across Canada? And I know Gary here, Gary is in the audience, and he's interested in food banks. And he always raises money every year for food banks. Well, here's Ontario, folks. 375,000 people, including 35,000 children, having food banks. Don't start saying it's just Africa. So could we not do something about that here? Argentina said, you know what? We're going to do something. So this little place called Tucumán, up here, middle of nowhere, they came up with a probiotic. This is it here. Lactobacillus rhamnosus CRL 1505. And they said, we're going to make a probiotic yogurt. And they did. And they went to the local council and they said, we want you to pay for giving this to school kids that are in malnourished areas of our city. They said, okay, why not? So they did. And now it's 300,000 school kids in Argentina get this probiotic yogurt every morning when they go to school. Wouldn't you rather have that than some of the stuff that they get? And it's paid by the governments. Because once they saw it working and took them on, the other ones said, well, hey, wait a minute, we should do the same. So, kind of neat. I told you I'd come back to this. Why would microbes in a different part of the body influence the brain? And here's one of the reasons. This is your vagus nerve. Right? The vagus nerve goes right up your spine. And it attaches to, this is the uterus, the ovary, the bladder, the kidneys, the intestinal tract, stomach, lungs, saliva, etc. So the gut-brain link is what people are talking about right now. And that means that things that happen in your gut affect the brain and probably vice versa. So they've done a study showing that you can reduce anxiety, and another study reduce depression by giving probiotics to the gut. They don't exactly know how it works, but we think there's some signaling mechanism that's affecting the brain. Now, they're not at the stage they're going to stop antidepressants. But if you could reduce the level or maybe prevent some people going on it, that's not a bad outcome. And of course, we're interested in other pain and discomfort that we feel at other sites that affect the brain. And this is all to do with chemicals produced by the microbes. So it's a very exciting future development. We continue our studies here at St. Joe's. And two more slides left, and then my summary, so it's not long to go. Kidney stones is the male equivalent of labor pain. Everybody's nodding. So, when I got married, I told you my wife had twins. It was only right, because I had twins when I was younger. Twin kidney stones. I was a total wuss. Anyway, it is unbelievable pain. So Jeremy, who's my colleague sitting up the back, he's got research. He's found bacteria inside these stones. So we're trying to develop new ways to prevent stone formation through probiotics, either given in the gut or maybe even to the urinary tract themselves. And one of the biggest places this is going to be important, so Matt Damon, No, Matt Damon. My daughter Jennifer and I went to Africa. I wanted to take her to see our project in Africa when she was 14. We got to the hotel, and the guy says, oh yeah, Matt Damon has just been here. She's like, what? Yeah, in fact, he was in your room. Jennifer's like, oh wow, Matt Damon was... Anyway, it was very cool. So, Matt Damon was in Africa. But I was telling you about Matt Damon because of the Martian movie, right? Remember? Well, it takes 2.5 years to go to Mars, 2.5 years to get back, and however long you spend there. So say 6 years. You will have kidney stones. The biggest problem in the astronaut program is you get kidney stones. So we've got this project which I submitted to NASA, which I don't know if it'll get funded, or actually not funded because it's not going to cost much. So I said, okay, what are they going to eat on the way to Mars? What are they going to eat in the International Space Station? Why don't they eat fermented food? So we've got this little experiment. I hope they accept it. It's really cool. So they'd get this, they'd put it into dried milk, they'd make fermented food in the spacecraft, and then they could potentially eat it all the way to Mars. Now, if Jeremy gets it, that we get bacteria in there that stop kidney stones, then hey, we've solved the problem. And you'll come back in, what, 10 years, Jeremy, of Nobel Prize? Probably, right? All right, another study, the last one. This was breast cancer. So it's known that if you breastfeed, you reduce your risk of cancer. So I asked the question, I said, well, what happens if you don't breastfeed? How do bacteria get to the breast milk? Because we know that in breast milk there's bacteria. And that's what I talked about earlier. If you're cesarean born, at least if you breastfeed, the mum is passing bacteria. And we said, well, if you don't breastfeed, there's still bacteria can get in through the nipple at least. So probably there's bacteria in there. And I went to Leslie Scott, who's a surgeon here. I said, Leslie, I just want you to give me the lobule and the duct. She looked at me. She says, look, you obviously don't know anything about the breast or the anatomy. And she says, we go in there, it's just fat. Unless we've got imaging, we can't even see where the tumor is, right? So naive, stupid me. So I said, right, go in and give us samples from wherever you can. And she did that. And every place her and Muriel Braxton went, we found bacteria in the tissue. Breast is supposed to be sterile, apart from the ducts and the lobules. And it turned out the bacteria in the cancer patients was different from the bacteria in the healthy patients. Now, that doesn't prove cause and effect. But this Irish group contacted us and says, we're doing the same stuff. We said, let's pull our results. Guess what? We found the same thing. A group in California found the same thing. So we think there's something going on. We applied for grant money, didn't get anything, because we're not cancer researchers. It's a stupid idea. Why would you fund us? Now, a Spanish group, this guy's really a neat guy, he said, okay, we're going to treat mastitis. Lots of women, when they lactate, they have mastitis. So they said, we're going to give either probiotics orally or antibiotics to treat mastitis. Guess what happened? The probiotics were better at curing the mastitis. So they said, okay, let's then take the breast milk and see if we find the probiotics. They found them. So you're going, well, hold on a minute. I swallowed the probiotics and now they've made it to the breast. How did that happen? Well, we think it's because there's immune cells in your gut. They picked them up and for whatever reason, they took them to the breast. Now, if you can do that, what happens if a woman has the wrong bacteria in her breast? Could we, by giving probiotics, alter that and maybe make them less like the ones in cancer patients? And that's a study that we're going to do right here with Muriel Braxton, and she is your next DocTalks speaker. Wonderful, wonderful surgeon. Let me finish up in summary. So we're living in a microbial world. If you didn't know it, you know it now. Didn't know before you came in. We have the opportunity to manipulate these microbes to benefit the planet and ourselves. And I mean the planet. This will have socio-economic as well as health impacts. We've forgotten about the socio-economic part. We have to find a way that everybody benefits. And I would argue that kids that are dying in countries like Africa and India and other places, it's because they don't get access to this, because the model we have is a high profit-driven model. We can change that. And what happens next depends on you as much as the young people who are the next researchers. So you should always believe that you can do something, because remember the number of times I was told I couldn't do it, which I think is all bullshit. Everything is out of reach until you reach it. This is arguably the best soccer player in the world. Thanks for your attention.